Well, if you have your Bibles for a moment, before we partake in the communion time, we're going to actually start out in Revelation, but we're not going to, most of our time will be in Daniel. So we're going to spend a few minutes there, and then we'll jump over to Daniel, and then next time we'll complete them both. Now, if you know where we're at in the book of Revelation, we're at the end of the 7 bowls, and we're getting ready, the 7 trumpets, we're getting ready for the 7 bowls, but in between we're picking up on our arch enemy Satan, and then now we're going to get his earthly counterpart, the Antichrist. And then you'll get another beast coming up here who is the false prophet, and so you get the unholy trinity. And so to get the background on the Antichrist, we'll go back to Daniel, because Daniel has a lot to say about the Antichrist and what kind of person he is. And remember that Satan is not the man dressed up in a red suit with horns and a pitchfork. He is called a dragon, but we'll look at his counterpart here in just a moment. It says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea," chapter 13, verse 1, "and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority." So you see that his power is coming from Satan. Just as Christ's power would come from God the Father, the Antichrist's power comes from Satan. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So we see, again, as he copies the Easter season, the Antichrist is killed, and then he's resurrected. And remember, I told you that the Satan and the Antichrist, and they're just copy artists, and they pervert the things of the Lord, but they're going to see a resurrection here, and I thought that's appropriate as we get near to that season. "So they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?' And he was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Again, 3.5 years, 1,260 days, the last half of the tribulation period. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And all who dwelt on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear to hear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." And I want to draw attention to verse 9 just for a second, because you notice that phrase was repeated at the end of every one of the letters to the churches. But there's something missing here. That one says, if you have ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to what? To the churches. You know why I believe it's not there? Because neither are we. Where are we at this time? We're in heaven. We're out of there. And I think that's a little plus there to give you a little, because some of these things are pretty dreary. And they're hard is going through all these things that are happening. One of the greatest hobbies of Bible students in the modern era has been to attempt to identify the Antichrist. This infamous person is mentioned in Daniel 7 and then described here in Revelation 13. And that's what we'll be looking at. It's interesting to note, though, some of the people that have been labeled as the Antichrist. And, of course, probably the most well-known figure would have been Adolf Hitler. And someone gave this tract to Dr. Jeremiah, and he said in 1941 it was published, proving that Hitler was the Antichrist. These things are always funny. So the proof was that the number found in Revelation, which Jim made mention of this morning, Revelation 13:8, what's the number of the beast? Okay. And that's the number of the beast. It could be reached by assigning numerical values to the letters of the English alphabet of Adolf's name, and you start with A equals 100, B equals 101, C equals 102. And if you add those all up, Hitler's name comes to 666. But guess what? They were wrong. And it says, because of that, he must be the Antichrist. Unfortunately, if you start sticking numbers on names and you pick the numbers, you can make any name almost come up with 666. After the Jewish Six-Day War in 1967, which was an amazing war, if you ever read that, it is amazing how the Jews overcame that opposition there, again, supernaturally. Their military leader, Moshe Dayan, was that people were sure he was the Antichrist. Others have suggested that Judas Iscariot was the Antichrist, since he was the only person Jesus ever referred to in the context of the devil. But where's Judas? He's still dead. The American president, guess who? John F. Kennedy was a candidate since he was discovered alive after being presumed dead in World War II. And because he received 666 votes at the 1956 Democratic Presidential Convention, and he was shot in the head by an assassin, as we'll see there, that so was the Antichrist, and many thought he would come back to life. Guess what? They're wrong again. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in 1973 was the author of a peace treaty with the Arab nation and Israel. They were sure that Henry Kissinger was the Antichrist. To avoid speculation, though, we just need to get back to the Word. And the Lord's not going to tell us who the Antichrist is. Could he be alive today? Yeah, he could be. He could be. He could be alive and on his way, as we'll see, working his way up through the ranks, become the leader that Satan would have him to become. But we don't know that, and I don't believe we'll be here when he is exposed. And so there we go. Daniel 7 is where we'll be gathering our clues from. And we'll just take a few minutes there. So if you mark your Bible there in Revelation, you don't have to. We'll spend the rest of our time mainly in Daniel chapter 7 and looking at some verses. What kind of person the Antichrist will be when he appears on the world stage? And I have, of course, on your outline. The first thing is he'll be a charismatic leader. Now, that doesn't mean he's from the charismatic church. He is a charismatic leader. Otherwise, people are going to be astonished with this guy. He is going to be a hero to a lot of people. People are going to look up to him. And Daniel chapter 7, verses 7 and 8 says, after this, I saw in the night visions, Daniel's having a vision here, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. There we go again, those horns. And in verse 24 says those 10 horns are 10 kings. Using the Bible to interpret that. He said, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. King James says great things, which also says there in Revelation chapter 13. It says he had eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking pompous words. And it's talking about his speaking ability. He's going to be quite an orator. He's going to have a way with words to win people's hearts over. That's the kind of guy this Antichrist is going to be. And then when you put Daniel and Revelation together, that's who we identify him as, the Antichrist. The reference to his speaking ability talks about his persuasiveness. of his personality, his charismatic nature. He's just going to draw people to him. People are going to like what he has to say. They're going to get those itchy ears tickled, Greg, and he's going to meet the world thinking that he is the number one man. And he's a great speaker. And Antichrist, it says in Revelation 13:5, he's speaking great things and blasphemies. He's going to feel the itching ears of the world, but he's going to condemn the saints and anything that's about God. He hates God, remember? He is inspired by Satan, who has been removed from his position in heaven, and he is going to hate God, and he's going to try to change anything about that. Probably not since the days of John F. Kennedy has the United States had an orator who could sway the masses. John F. Kennedy had a way to really capture people's attention. Another guy that was alive about that time who was a great orator was Martin Luther. He could speak to the crowds and sway them good to help with the mess that was taking place at that time. And so there were two great speakers. He mobilized many people for the civil rights movement with powerful words. And I always remember John F. Kennedy as saying this, it's not what the country can do for you, but what can I do for the country? And that stuck in people's minds. That's the opposite of what we hear today, right? Today we say, oh, what can this country do for me? They're not worried about what I can do for the country. And he had that ability. And Adolf Hitler. Now here was a man who could mesmerize the masses. Thousands, tens of thousands of people. He just commanded their attention. And he could convince them to do things that they shouldn't do. He had that sway over people. I believe that he was energized by the enemy. He wasn't the Antichrist, but he definitely had an agenda against the Jewish people, right? And he was energized to do those horrific things. And you all know of those things in all those camps where those people were treated in ways. He would do all kinds of terrible things. But he was able to convince people that they were right in their mind. And really, it's not a whole lot different than we see in a lot of these cult leaders. It is amazing. I watch them on TV, how they can... Charles Manson, how could he get this group of people to do those gruesome things? He just had a power over them. Even when he was in prison, you could see that look in his eyes and his face. And I had one cure for him. I would have never paid for us to take care of him that long, let me tell you that. But my ways are not always the way that society sees things. But you just see that kind of thing. The Antichrist will be that kind of person. He'll be able to speak to the entire world now. You know, the world's just a click away today. Isn't that something? You can know what's going on all the way on the other side of the world just like that. And he's going to mesmerize the world. He's going to speak to them, and they're going to admire him. They're going to end up worshiping him. He's going to speak great things as far as the world is concerned. It also tells us in Revelation 7:20 that he's going to be one handsome man. Look at this. 7:20 it says, and the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, the little horn, before where 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words. So we get that same description, great order, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. Now, it doesn't mean he's just completely handsome, but he's a man that looks like a leader. He looks like a person in charge. Isn't it amazing how some people can stand up in front of people and just their appearance seems to command attention? Well, I watched a lot of preachers at Moody Pastors Conference, and one man that always struck me this way was Joseph Stoll. He's a Colon boy. He was president of Moody for years, and he just had this ability when he stood up there. He demanded respect, demanded you listen. He wasn't really a shouting preacher like Tony Evans, one of my favorites. Tony Evans, you know, if you didn't get on fire by him, you got wet wood. Because this man can preach his way. He's just lost his lovely wife not too long ago, and just a few weeks ago. And just love to hear that guy preach. But Joseph Stoll just kind of swayed you in to listen to him when he just walked up there. Good-looking man, well-spoken, just perfect English. Looked like he just came out of the cookie cutter book. And I just always thought of him in that way. And that's the way the little horn's going to be. He's going to appear as a chief or a lord, commanding and having a commanding appearance. Just as, and you might wonder, well, how's he going to get in control? How's the Antichrist going to work his way from the sea, it says there, from the masses? We'll look at next time together. He's going to work his way up because the world's going to be at a low point. Remember what's going on, folks? Hell is breaking loose. This world is falling apart. 2/3 of the population could be killed. We're talking about billions of people dead. We got disease running rampant. Just look what the coronavirus is doing to our nation right now, the world. I mean, it's amazing. A coronavirus. Next thing you know, we got 81,000 people infected. We got over 2,000 people dead from a virus. That's nothing what's going to happen compared to what's going to take place in the tribulation period. And the people are all looking to somebody. Who's going to help us? Who's going to fix this? And the Antichrist has worked his way up through the roots. It says he uproots 3 kings, and he gets his way to the top, and he says, I got an answer for you. And the people are going to say, wow, that guy has got it. That's the answer. And he's going to have answers because he's really smart. He's a good speaker. He knows the system. He knows how to play the system. That's the kind of guy we're looking at here. And people are going to fall in love with him, and they're going to think he's got it. And then he'll do some other things. And we're going to look at those things next time together. We'll see that he's clever. And sometimes we always want to paint the enemy as being stupid. You know, we do that in a lot of crime shows on TV and, you know, the old Westerns. You know, the bad guy never does shoot as good as the good guy. And they're always stupid. They repeat the same mistakes. But this guy's not going to do that. He's going to be smart. And to catch him, there's only one person going to catch him and deal with him, and that's the Lord as he gets to the end of his time, as we've already looked at. And he will oppose and exalt himself as God in this world. And so